I am Mara Whitaker, 32 years old, living in Portland, Oregon, and I spend most of my days running a small contracting business that builds decks and fences for people who want a piece of outdoor comfort. I grew up in a neighborhood where the rain never seemed to stop, and the streets were always slick, so I learned early how to work with my hands and how to keep my mind focused even when the world felt heavy. I was always the quiet type, the one who would stay after school to finish a shift at the grocery store because I needed the money to pay for my bus fare and my medicine. I was also anemic, which meant I got tired easily and often fell asleep in class, especially in biology, where the teacher talked about cells and mitosis while I was thinking about my next paycheck. My teacher in high school was a man named John Smith, a biology teacher who seemed to think that a tired student who nodded off was a waste of space. He would call me a loser and a burnout right in front of the whole class, and his voice would echo in my mind long after the school bell rang. I never told anyone how much his words hurt because I was too busy trying to survive, but the memory of his sneering face stayed with me like a scar. 10 years later, I had built a modest but respectable contracting company, and I finally felt that I could stand up to the people who had tried to crush me. One morning, I received a call from a man who wanted a new deck for his house. The name on the paperwork was John Smith, the most ordinary name I had ever heard, and I thought it might be a coincidence. When I arrived at the address, I knocked on the door and a man opened it, looking older but still carrying the same stiff posture I remembered from the high school hallway. He did not recognize me because my hair was now a foot longer, my beard was thick, and the nervous teenager had become a confident woman. I introduced myself as Mara Whitaker, the contractor, and he introduced himself as Mr. Smith, the homeowner. He did not remember the way he had once called me a loser, but I remembered every word. I walked around his yard, looked at the space where a deck could be built, and told him I would have an estimate ready by the end of the evening. As soon as I drove back to my shop, I opened my laptop and typed his name into a public record search. I discovered that he earned a comfortable salary as a senior manager at a technology firm, a salary that was far higher than the cost of any deck I could ever build. The thought of turning the tables on the man who had made my senior year miserable sparked a fire inside me that I had not felt since I was a teenager. I decided that I would not only give him a beautiful deck, but I would also charge him a price that reflected his wealth, a price that would make him feel the sting of being taken for granted. I spent the next 2 weeks drawing up plans, ordering the best lumber, and calculating a total cost of $38,000, even though the actual material and labor would only be about $20,000. I sent him a polished proposal, explained the timeline, and said the final amount would be $38,000, a number that seemed reasonable for a high-end deck in a city like Portland. He signed the contract without hesitation, perhaps because he trusted his own name and his own status. The work began, and my crew built a deck that was smooth, sturdy, and beautiful, with railings that curved like a wave and a surface that shone under the gray sky. When the job was finished, I sent him the final invoice, and the payment went directly into my business account. I watched the numbers rise, and with each digit I felt a piece of the old wound close. I had taken the power that he had once used to humiliate me and turned it into a lesson that he would not forget. The deck stood in his backyard, a reminder that even a teacher who thought he could label a student as worthless could be outmatched by the same student who had learned to work hard and never give up. After the payment cleared, I called him to thank him for his business, and I could hear a hint of surprise in his voice when I said, "I hope you enjoy the deck, Mr. Smith. It took a lot of effort, but sometimes the best work comes from the people who have been told they are not good enough." He did not respond with the usual arrogance. Instead, he was quiet, perhaps realizing that the tables had turned. I drove home that night, feeling the rain tap against my windshield, and I thought about how the world often gives us chances to settle old scores, but it also gives us the chance to rise above them. I had taken revenge, but I also proved to myself that I could survive the cruelty of a teacher and become the person I always wanted to be. In the weeks that followed, I received a call from another client who mentioned the deck and asked if I could build a similar one for his house. He said a neighbor had spoken highly of my work, and he wanted someone who could deliver quality. I realized that the revenge had not only paid the bills, It had also brought new opportunities, and I felt a strange satisfaction that the old wound had turned into a new beginning. As I look out at the rain-soaked streets of Portland from my workshop, I know that I will never forget the voice of the teacher who called me a loser, but I also know that I have become the person who can build something beautiful out of that pain, and that is the greatest victory of all.